From MNTech, the Micro Nanotechnology Education Center, and JATE, the Journal of Advanced Technological Education, this is the JATE Writer Studio. In each one of these sessions, we'll have a guided conversation with an author, and we highlight authors who publish articles in peer-reviewed journals, just like JATE, so that they can share their story and their writing process with you. We want to give authors a voice to share their tips and tricks about how to write peer-reviewed journal articles. And today, I'm pleased to be talking with Elizabeth Azhikannickal. Elizabeth published an article in the Journal of Advanced Technological Education, which was called The Development of a Smart Manufacturing Technology Earn and Learn Program at Aurora Community College. Elizabeth, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure, Peter. Thank you for having me.
So, Elizabeth, can you briefly just describe yourself? Like, where do you come from and what's your background? And then we'll start talking about your article a little bit.
So, I was born and raised in Canada and relocated to the US in 2015. And I did all of my education, so my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD, all in mechanical engineering at Canadian universities. And I've taught at both two-year colleges and four-year institutions as well in engineering programs. I have a lot of research work in the area of lightweight automotive materials development. So after my PhD, even during my PhD, I did a lot of prototype development work in that area. But I knew that I really enjoyed teaching, and I knew I wanted to kind of get into the sort of academic sphere. So I've been at Marion Technical College since 2019. I started as a faculty member there, and then I moved into the director role 1 year later. And I've been very pleased because I've been able to be a part of a number of NSF ATE grants, serving as the principal investigator. So that's been a great learning opportunity and an opportunity to bring, additional funding and resources and pilot various initiatives at the college as well.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So we're going to talk about your article in JATE about the development of a smart manufacturing earn and learn program. Just in a couple sentences, can you describe what the article's about, and then we'll go into more detail later.
So the article focuses on the development of a sort of an Industry 4.0 Earn and Learn program. It's the first of its kind at our college. And basically, it's mapping out the curriculum for a two-year associate's degree program, where the first year they take all technical classes, and then the second year they take classes 2 days a week, but they earn on the job training 3 days a week. So just to kind of get their foot in the door, get a little bit more practical experience, learn about what working in industry is all about. So that's what the article focuses on.
And so, Elizabeth, as part of this Earn and Learn program, the students, while they're at Marion Technical College, they're also earning a paycheck from the company that they're working for. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So they're getting funded for the work that they're doing, and they can put that towards tuition and books and lab fees and so forth. So it's an additional source of funding that they wouldn't otherwise get.
So, Elizabeth, you explained what your academic background is and what your working background was. But what's your writing background? How did you learn to write peer-reviewed journal articles?
So I've published quite a few articles in scientific journals throughout my master's degree and my PhD. So I don't want to say it comes naturally to me, but I see the importance of it just as a form of disseminating to the community. So I've been able to hone my skills just because I've been writing, conference papers and journal articles, probably more than 10 years.
So it sounds like you've had some background before writing your article for JATE, writing for a number of other peer-reviewed journals.
Correct. Yeah, I wrote for quite a few engineering, sort of more technical based journals as well.
Mhm. So, Elizabeth, how did you come up with the idea for this article? You do a lot of work at Marion Technical College, but how did you come up with an idea about writing an article about this Earn to Learn program?
I think, well, one of the reasons is it's very rare, especially in the state of Ohio. There's a couple schools that deliver that kind of a program, but it's not very common. So I wanted to kind of talk about, how that kind of a program works in terms of both the courses, and the on-the-job training. And also the importance of it because we're having Intel relocate here. They're going to be opening their fab plant in the next year or so. So they're looking to hire 3,000 technicians. And then we've got obviously the need from local manufacturers as well. So it's an opportunity, to building this kind of a program. It gives students a leg up because getting the technical courses is one thing, but being able to apply it on the job is sometimes a very different thing. Troubleshooting problems and learning how to, install, operate, and integrate systems. So if they can get their leg up by kind of getting some of that on the job training before they transition to a full-time position, I think it can be super helpful. And we're getting really good feedback from the employers too, because if the students finish that 1 year on the job training, in most cases, the employer who they've been with or who they've been doing this on the job training with typically hires them full time because they've already vetted them. They know who they are. They know their work ethic. So it can be a very mutually beneficial sort of arrangement. So I think it was just an opportunity to get the word out about how we've structured this kind of a program, and maybe other community colleges could, follow suit and do something similar. I think it'll be good for the communities and also for the state as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've got this unique project and that you've had a lot of success with it. And so being able to disseminate both how the project's structured, but then also how the results of it, that can be really beneficial to other community and technical colleges. Can we talk a little bit about co-authors? You had a number of different co-authors for Marion Technical College, and then you also had an evaluator that was a co-author on your paper. How did you find your co-authors and how did they contribute?
So the co-authors were actually my co-PIs on the NSF ATE grant that this article was based on. So we actually were able to launch this program as a result of this ATE grant. So the co-authors were co-PIs with me on that grant. Um, and I added one other supporting faculty member who was not listed on the grant, but he was very pivotal in um, facilitating a couple of summer camps to recruit, just to get more students and young people interested in engineering and Industry 4.0. And then our evaluator, she was the evaluator on the grant as well. So she helped with designing and deploying a lot of the surveys for our professional development events and our summer camps. And just batting ideas about the structure of the paper and what we should focus on and so forth. So it was a good core team, but really the core team from the grant.
So, Elizabeth, sometimes writers, they feel like they don't have enough, that they don't have enough data, or they don't have enough participants yet, they don't have enough experience, they don't have enough results. How did you know that you and your team had enough to start writing this peer-reviewed journal article?
So I think, first of all, we were nearing the end of the grant, so we knew most of the deliverables that we needed to provide for the grant were accomplished. So that was kind of a good feeling. So we knew, okay, maybe this is the time to put together an article. We had students going through the program. Um, so we had all our certifications in place, like all of the new courses were built that were part of the kind of the coursework part of this program. We had all the certifications in place. They were being deployed to students, so a lot of those major deliverables were in place. We felt like it was a good time. And it was fresh on everyone's mind. Sometimes when you wait to write this stuff, you just forget some of the nuances and the details. So it just felt like the right time. And we had a lot of good survey data about some of the outreach events that we had planned and deployed, so we could include some of that data to support the overall program as well. So it felt like it was everything seemed to have come together at that point.
Right. So you have this ATE NSF grant. You've had success. You're kind of moving towards the end of the grant, and you've got all these results, both what happened to the students as well as some evaluation data from your external evaluator about what happened during your professional development. And then you can kind of wrap up all of that kind of thing into a peer-reviewed journal article. So, Elizabeth, you said that you've got some experience writing for academic journals. How do you go about the writing process? Do you go from the very start of the article and then work all the way through? Do you write sections out of order? Do you start with an outline? Talk to me a little bit about what your writing process is like.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I can say I have a standard process, but for this one, and typically what I like to do is just kind of create an outline so that I know kind of the overall big picture of what the article is going to cover. Otherwise, I find I might just focus too much on one area and then not have enough room for everything else. So I always like to kind of create an outline of all the major ideas that I want to present in the right sections. And then I tend to kind of fill them each in little by little. Just so that I know, okay, well, if I have no information in a particular section that I may have outlined, maybe I need to remove that or kind of consolidate. So I like kind of looking at it big picture first and creating some subheadings or subtopics and start filling them in, and then kind of go in and fill in more of the details here and there. That's kind of the way that works for me. I just find I don't miss any details that way. And I kind of present it as a story.
So creating an outline first, like a structure of what the article is going to be, and then you can fill in details or different parts of that outline later. So Elizabeth, at the end of peer-reviewed journal articles, there's a list of references. How did you find references to include in your JATE article?
Well, that was more for I looked at what I wanted to make sure I touched on was what were other people doing, other schools or institutions doing in this area. So I had pulled that from, other reports I had written. And even when we were beginning to develop this program, we wanted to see what had other institutions done, what was published in this area. There, a lot of it is very new because this kind of a program isn't very common. But just through other reports I'd written, I had kind of gathered a list of references from journals and just formal reports, state documents, just about institutions that had done stuff similar, maybe not exactly the same. So I kept kind of a running list of those references. So when it came down to writing this article, I could pull all of those references back into my, kind of the background or literature review. So it wasn't too bad just because I had been keeping it. And what I tried to do is anytime I come up with interesting articles that I think might be relevant to the program, I kind of keep a record of it. So it wasn't starting really from ground zero at that point.
So sort of throughout the project, when you've been writing things like reports or when you've been reading things, maybe it's from the state of Ohio or somewhere else, then you just keep a catalog, like a running list of all of those things, and then you can refer back to it. That's a pretty smart method. So let's talk about the submission process now. JATE, the Journal of Advanced Technological Education, has you upload the manuscript and then also has you upload the cover letter. So what was the manuscript submission process like for you and your team?
I thought it was, I did most of that just because I kind of compiled everything and put everything to kind of the final details together. But I thought it was it was well set up. We didn't really run into any issues. And I had been used to that process because that's typically how it is, how it was with most of the other submissions I'd done with other journals. So it was just a matter of getting the supporting files in with the right resolution, the right file type, and just making sure all of those were set up. That was the only, otherwise I thought it was pretty straightforward. Didn't have many issues whatsoever. And the staff at JAT was phenomenal. So if I was missing something or anything, I would get an email immediately. And so it was a good process overall.
So it sounds like the uploading of your manuscript and the cover letter was pretty smooth and it was pretty clear. If you needed any additional things to go along with your article for publication. What was the peer review process like? How did reading those reviews make you feel? And then once you and your team got the peer reviews back, what did you do?
So I think we got them one at a time. So we didn't get all of the reviewers provide their submissions all together. I think we got the first reviewer, and then I think a few weeks later, or maybe a month later, we got the second reviewer, which was good because we had the time to process the feedback from the first reviewer and kind of get through those. So I was able to handle most of that because I don't think there was really anything very overly difficult to deal with or anything. A lot of it was just kind of rewording or explaining some things which weren't quite clear. So I was able to handle most of that in good time. I didn't really have to go back to them with clarifying questions or anything. I was able to handle them. And then we got the second reviewer's feedback, I think about a month later. And it was just some formatting stuff and a couple of minor, I didn't find there was anything too overhauling or anything. So it was pretty straightforward.
Good. Well, and it also sort of sounds like you were familiar with reading those reviews from other previously published articles. And so that you and your team understood that the purpose is to make it like the best article it can be, not necessarily just to criticize you and your team for the work that you did. So I think you did a good job being like proactive with those changes and realizing everyone was trying to make the article the best it could be.
Oh,
So,
oh yeah, because our team, we're so deep into it. Sometimes it's hard to have perspective because we built the program and of course we think it's not many changes need to be made. So it's very nice to have someone or a couple people who just fresh mind looking at it from kind of a fresh perspective to see. And it wasn't really about changing the program. It was just more about making sure we're, presenting the ideas in the best way possible. It's clear. We're not leaving pieces out that, again, if other institutions want to replicate what we're doing, to have the most important details, I think is important. So it was nice having a fresh set of eyes who didn't really know how this program was structured. So we took it very positively. I think I think at the end, it was just a much better product at the end.
yeah, that idea that the reviewers aren't necessarily intimately familiar
Mm-hmm.
with your project and the work that they did, so they can provide this perspective that might be different from you or the co-PIs or the rest of the team. So Elizabeth, to finish up the guided questions for today, before I open it up to anybody else who has questions, what advice would you give to new writers who are starting their first peer-reviewed journal article, or to a PI or a co-PI of an ATE project that's coming close to the end and has some results, but they've never written a peer-reviewed manuscript before? What advice would you give them?
So I guess if it's part of an AT grant, I'd always think keep that in your mind in the very beginning. Just think, I'm going to try to disseminate this in a journal. That way, just like I said, when I came across really good references, I just put it into a document. So there was a running list of stuff that I could refer back to. When you try to do all this stuff right at the end, it just seems very overwhelming. But if you're thinking about pieces of it, um, sort of from the start or the midway point of a grant, it just all comes together much better, I think, than trying to, so if you've got an idea for a paper, start it as early as possible, even just an outline. That way, when you're, as you're moving through the grant and your objectives are being fulfilled, you can start populating that outline little by little. Then at the end, it almost just comes together. You're not so overwhelmed. Now I have to write a paper. I don't know what topic. I don't have references. I don't. So I would always say, think about it as a milestone. Build an outline as early as you can, and then just start filling in pieces. It doesn't have to be all grammatically and structurally correct, but just ideas. Have, running list of references. Then at the end, you've got a good outline. You just have to go in there and fill in the details, and obviously optimize the writing and so forth. But it seems like a much less daunting task than starting it right at the end and having this 20-page paper that you need to write. And if you can attend workshops, I know there are workshops that exist for writing papers, and just, even workshops for people who could edit, even within colleges, some places, I would encourage people to have other people, even within your institutions, look at your paper within your department or other departments. Just have them take a look at your paper, and they, especially if they're a fresh set of eyes and they don't really know intimately what you're doing or what your sort of deliverables are, but just to get as much feedback from others, I think is very valuable as well.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. I think that those will be really helpful for other authors. Have this idea of keep a running document that includes things like your references or things that you might like look back on. Also, have an outline built and then slowly fill it in. And then also use resources and support that's available to you at community colleges. You both have colleagues, and there are other systems in place that help people like student writers too. So thank you very much for sharing all those details with me. So before we finish up today, does anybody else have any questions for Elizabeth, or questions about the Smart Manufacturing Technology Earn to Learn program? If there aren't any other additional questions today, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here at the JATE Writers Studio and sharing both your writing process as well as tips and tricks for other new writers. And please keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.